1:13 local time, Western Iran, and we're about to find out. Outside Kermanshah, the night air is cold, still, almost gentle. A crescent moon hangs over black rock and scrub. Truck convoys crawl with their headlights masked. Guards stamp their boots against the cold. From a distance, the mountain looks asleep. In less than 1 hour, that mountain becomes prey. Deep inside it, a hardened command base built to survive missiles, sanctions, sabotage, and time is about to face something it was never truly designed for. Not a raid, not a warning, a hunt. The location is real enough to matter. The Zagros Range runs like a stone spine across western Iran, giving defenders exactly what militaries crave: elevation, concealment, overburden, and tunnels that can disappear from satellites until the wrong door opens at the wrong second. Now, in this fictional near-future scenario, the facility sits inside a military zone east of Kermanshah, carved into granite and reinforced over decades by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Aerospace Force. 6 tunnel portals, 3 internal levels, roughly 1,200 personnel rotating through command, maintenance, security, missile handling, and communications. Fiber optic lines buried deep, backup generators behind blast walls, hardened doors weighing more than main battle tanks. Imagine you're standing on that ridgeline. Under your boots, launch crews are moving weapons, commanders are checking maps, and a regional crisis is one authorization away from open war. Why does this mountain matter? Because geography is power. From western Iran, missile forces can threaten U.S. positions across the Gulf, pressure regional capitals, and hold shipping lanes under a shadow few insurance markets can ignore. Real locations shape the danger. Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, Al Dhafra in the UAE, naval traffic near the Strait of Hormuz, tanker routes, surveillance corridors, partner nations already on edge. The base isn't just a bunker, it's a nerve center. If it survives, salvos can be coordinated, launchers can be assigned targets, decoys can be mixed with real strikes, and the fog of war gets thick enough for bad decisions to multiply. Heart-pounding yet? Good. Because inside that mountain, they think the fog protects them. In Tehran, in this scenario, the pressure has been building for days. Maritime harassment, drone incidents, a proxy strike that crossed an invisible line. Public rhetoric escalating faster than private diplomacy can contain it. Political leaders want a display of resolve without inviting national collapse. Military planners want something more precise, a controlled shock. Their concept is brutally simple. Use the Mountain Command Base to coordinate a pre-dawn regional missile and drone barrage large enough to stun Washington's partners, rattle global markets, and prove Iran can still impose unbearable cost. 36 ballistic missiles prepared for rapid sequencing. 14 land attack cruise missiles in dispersed storage. 28 one-way attack drones earmarked as clutter and confusion. The bet is that even if defenses intercept most, enough will leak through to create images the world cannot ignore. From the adversary's perspective, the logic feels solid. They have depth, they have terrain, they have redundancy. They have real air defense systems layered around western Iran, including Russian-origin S-300 variants, domestically fielded Bavar 373 batteries, medium-range systems like Cordad, shorter-range point defenses, decoy emitters, and mobile radar units that rarely stay still for long. More important, they believe time is on their side. They assume any U.S. response to a pending missile strike must come after launch, after attribution, after legal review, after political coordination. In other words, after the mountain has already done its job. They think the Americans will be forced to play defense first. They think concrete buys initiative. They think depth creates immunity. Could you blame them? For 30 years, buried command sites have been the insurance policy of every military that feared American air power. But there's a problem with their plan. What they didn't account for is not just stealth, not just speed, not just bigger bombs. It's information dominance. The mountain has hidden entrances, yes. It has false portals, yes. It has dummy ventilation towers and decoy access roads, yes. But every hardened base that intends to fight has to breathe, communicate, move heat, move personnel, move power, move signal. And movement is the one thing modern surveillance punishes without mercy. While Iranian planners believe their strength lies in depth, U.S. analysts have spent years learning the pattern of life around sites exactly like this one. Which access road shows fresh tire wash after midnight? Which thermal signature appears when blast doors cycle? Which radio network goes quiet before high-priority weapons handling? Or which generator hum means command staff are already underground? They don't need the whole mountain. They need the brainstem. That is the flaw in the thinking. The Iranian side believes the mountain is the weapon. American planners understand the mountain is only a container. break the command core, sever internal communications, collapse the critical shafts, crater the portals, and the tunnels become a tomb for capability. Storage without coordination, launchers without sequencing, operators without orders. A predator doesn't waste energy clawing through every inch of hide. It strikes the throat. And tonight, in this fictional scenario, the throat has already been identified. The first sign comes at 1:41 local time. A space-based infrared cue flags abnormal heat blooms near one of the eastern access areas. At 1:46, a U.S. Signals intelligence platform listening from outside Iranian airspace detects a sudden change in encrypted traffic volume associated with regional missile units. At 1:52, another sensor pass confirms multiple transporter erector launchers dispersing from storage cutouts toward firing positions tied to the mountain's command net. At 1:57, a buried communications relay near the complex spikes, then shifts to wartime transmission discipline. That's when the quiet assumption becomes a hard conclusion. This isn't an exercise. This isn't posture. This is launch preparation. Now you're there in the Combined Air Operations Center at Al Udeid. Screens glow blue, amber, red. Air battle managers lean over consoles. Intel officers are cross-checking tracks. Lawyers are in the room. Your commanders are already thinking 3 moves ahead. If the mountain goes active and the salvo leaves first, regional defenses can absorb much of it, but not without risk, not without debris, not without escalation on terms chosen by the other side. 10 minutes pass like 10 seconds. A recommendation moves up the chain. Neutralize the command node before coordinated launch authority can be transmitted in full. Restrict the strike to military targets. Avoid civilian population centers. Prepare for retaliation anyway. Could you make that call with millions across the Gulf waking up beneath potential trajectories? In Washington, in this scenario, authorization comes fast because the bomber was already in motion. That's the part many people miss about modern air power. The dramatic moment is never the takeoff. The dramatic moment is realizing the aircraft launched hours ago because planners anticipated exactly this branch of the crisis tree. A B-21 Raider, flying as part of a tightly controlled conventional strike package in this fictional near-future setting, is already inbound from a route designed to minimize warning and maximize ambiguity. Publicly, we know the real B-21 is a dual-capable penetrating strike stealth bomber intended for high-threat environments. In this story, that future has arrived. It is supported by KC-46 tankers far from danger, linked into a wider network of surveillance and battle management, and carrying weapons chosen for one purpose: kill what hides under rock. The aircraft itself is almost invisible in the story until it matters. No afterburner drama, no roaring silhouette, just a dark geometry eating distance. And inside, the crew sees not the mountain but the data picture around it. Air defense sectors, timing windows, decoy corridors, weather, wind, threat emitters flickering on and off like nervous eyelids. You're in that cockpit now, oxygen dry in your throat, gloves tight on the controls. You know one mistake here doesn't just lose an aircraft, it can detonate a region. The enemy below thinks in layers of concrete and steel. The crew above thinks in seconds. At 2:09, the shaping phase begins. The first wave doesn't try to punch the mountain, it strips away its confidence. From standoff positions, a salvo of ADM-160 MALD decoys and electronic attack effects pushes toward western Iran, forcing defenders to ask the worst question any air defense commander can face at night. Which returns are ghosts, and which ones kill? Why do Iranian radar crews light up sectors they had planned to hold in reserve? Mobile batteries reposition. Fire control radars blink active, then silent, then act again. That hesitation is enough. Less time than your average coffee break, and the defensive picture is already polluted. At 2:12, U.S. Navy assets a wider contribute their piece of the mosaic. Tomahawk cruise missiles, launched from sea-based platforms well outside the immediate kill zone, race low toward pre-selected military targets associated with the mountain's external nervous system. A relay node on ridgeline, a power distribution site feeding Hardened communications, an above-ground command support building, and 2 known air defense coordination points. Not the whole network, just the pieces that matter first. Now one explodes against reinforced concrete and showers a slope with sparks. Another punches into a relay shelter and turns it into a black rectangle of flame. A third severs power redundancy that the defenders assumed they'd need later, not now. The mountain is still standing, but it is already going blind in one eye. Now flip the perspective. Down below, Iranian operators are trying to make sense of a sky that suddenly feels crowded and wrong. A Bavar battery receives conflicting tracks. A short-range system shifts to local control. A command van loses one data feed, then another. Orders come in clipped bursts. Hold fire, then conserve, then engage. They expected a wall of aircraft. Instead, they get uncertainty. And uncertainty is poison in air defense. One crew launches early at a decoy, another waits too long. A third relocates and drives straight into a timing gap it doesn't know exists. They thought the mountain would make them hunters. At 2:14, they are already being stalked. At 2:15, supporting stealth fighters, F-35s in this fictional scenario, press the confusion. Not for spectacle, for geometry. Their job is to identify exposed emitters, suppress point defenses, and keep the corridor unstable just long enough for the raider to reach weapon release. Anti-radiation shots arc toward active radars. Precision-guided munitions strike a mobile launcher staging area outside the main complex. 2 transporter vehicles burn. A radar dish topples sideways like a snapped neck. An ammunition truck goes up in a brief white flash. Sound reaches the nearest villagers as a rolling crack against the mountainside. But the real violence is electronic. Links severed, sectors isolated, confidence collapsing. Then comes the moment the title promised. At 2:17 local time, the B-21 reaches its release point. In this fictional near-future strike, the Raider is armed for hardened target attack, configured to deliver deep penetration ordnance against the mountain's critical nodes. The crew has 2 primary aim points and a backup logic chain if one disappears. Aim point 1, the main access gallery feeding the internal command level. Aim point 2, a structurally vulnerable section above the command chamber identified through years of cumulative analysis, rock depth, reinforcement pattern, thermal behavior, and the way the site had been expanded. The first weapon drops clean, then the second. No cinematic fireball yet, just separation, silence, gravity, guidance, fate. 4 seconds, that's all. The first penetrator strikes near the primary tunnel axis with a violence the mountain has never felt from directly above. Rock jumps, concrete buckles. The blast door inside the main gallery is driven off alignment as pressure slams through confined space. Electrical conduits burst into sparks. Men 50 meters below the impact point are thrown against walls before they even understand what happened. The second weapon follows on its own track, delayed just enough to exploit what the first has broken. It punches deeper, then detonates where the command complex was supposed to be safest. Screens go black. Dust becomes a living thing. Reinforced partitions flex, crack, and collapse. Air is sucked out of one corridor and shoved violently into another. The mountain doesn't explode outward. It convulses inward. This is where hardened sites die, not in one Hollywood flash, but in system failure. Ventilation shredded, communications severed, lighting gone, blast doors jammed, internal routes blocked by debris and smoke, staff officers cut off from launch crews cut off from target packets, backup generators trying to kick in while fuel lines rupture and circuit protection trips. The base was built to resist impact. It was not built to continue coherent command while sections of itself are folding under dynamic pressure. One surviving colonel in an auxiliary room tries to re-establish control through a field network. He gets fragment, static, half a coordinate, then nothing. Imagine being in that chamber, dust in your mouth, ears ringing. You know the mountain above you still exists. But the war below it has already changed. At 2:19, secondary effects cascade across the complex. A ventilation shaft collapses. One of the western tunnel portals jams partially open, exposing vehicles queued inside to follow on strikes. U.S. sensors watching the site register sudden thermal bursts from emergency systems and fuel fires. External security teams scramble toward entrances that no longer answer. Medics run uphill into falling debris. A short-range air defense crew, cut loose from Central Command, fires blindly at a target it cannot see and reveals its position. Seconds later, precision weapons from the supporting package erase the launcher from the hillside. Not a battle, not a duel, a calculated hunt. But the story doesn't end with the mountain hit. Because pieces of the Iranian launch plan survive just long enough to become dangerous. On pre-delegated authority and fragmentary orders, several dispersed launch units act before they lose confidence completely. At 2:21, the first ballistic missile leaves a concealed firing area west of the main complex. Then another. Then 3 more from separate points. A coastal unit launches cruise missiles intended to complicate the air picture over the Gulf. Drone team, already fueled and staged, release one-way attack drones into the dark like embers kicked from a fire. Final count from the surviving attempt. 11 ballistic missiles, 7 cruise missiles, and 18 drones actually get airborne. Not the full planned barrage, not even close, but enough to test every promise U.S. and partner defenses have made to the people under those skies. This is where the wider system answers. Space-based warning detects the ballistic launches almost immediately. Regional command centers across the Gulf snap from strike mode to shield mode. Sirens sound. Message traffic surges. At Al Udeid, crews sprint to protected positions while Patriot batteries align for terminal engagement. A THAAD battery elsewhere in theater is fed tracks for higher altitude intercept opportunities. At sea, an Aegis-equipped destroyer turns data into firing solutions faster than human fear can finish a sentence. You're there now on that operations floor. Every symbol on the screen is either a weapon, a decoy, or a lie. And somewhere below those icons are people. Maintainers, cooks, intelligence officers, pilots on alert, each with families who will only learn later how close the night came. But the ballistic phase is first. Two SM-3 interceptors rise from the destroyer in sharp white lances, climbing into the black to meet threats outside the atmosphere. One kill, then a second. Higher up, clean flashes no one on the ground sees. THAAD takes the next layer, engaging missiles that survive long enough to descend into its battle space. Another intercept, then another. Debris begins to spread harmlessly over empty desert sectors. The raid was supposed to create shock. Instead, it is being dismantled in pieces. One ballistic missile breaks awkwardly during terminal maneuvers after losing command updates and tumbles off its intended path. The last of the ballistic threats that make it lower are met by Patriot PAC-3 batteries. Each launch a brutal upward stab of fire from the Earth. 11 launched, 10 destroyed. Then one falls short after fragmentation and scatters burning debris into an uninhabited area beyond the primary target zone. Then the cruise missiles and drones arrive, messy and low. Cruise missiles are harder to dramatize because they fly like thieves, not gladiators. They hug terrain, use clutter, and arrive late enough to punish anyone already celebrating. That's why the layered defense matters. Airborne early warning platforms push updated tracks. Fighters move to intercept. One F-35 acquires a low flyer over dark water and kills it with a single air-to-air shot. Another missile is destroyed by shipborne air defense. A third is lost to Patriot engagement near the defended footprint. The remaining cruise missiles split and weave, but without robust command support from the Mountain network. Their timing is off and their routing less adaptive. 7 launched, 6 destroyed. One manages to crash into the perimeter of a storage yard, igniting a localized fire and injuring several personnel with debris. No strategic effect, but if you were standing that watch, it felt very real. The drones are last, and in some ways they are the cruelest because they force people to stay tense after the big explosions are over. 18 one-way attack drones, some real, some configured as distractions, drift toward defended airspace. Guns, short-range missiles, and fighters all get a vote. A naval close-in weapon system hammers one out of the sky in a stream of orange tracers. Another is caught by ground-based short-range defense. Several more are killed by fighter patrols cued by radar and infrared search. One drops into the sea. Then another clips debris and self-destructs short of target. By 2:39, every surviving drone has either been splashed, crashed, or reduced to falling fragments. 18 launched, 18 eliminated. Their only success is forcing everyone to keep looking up. Here's the statistic that tells the story best in this fictional scenario. Planned Iranian opening barrage, 78 weapons. Actual launch after the Mountain Command strike, 36. Weapons that reached meaningful target areas with any effect, 2. Strategic impact, effectively 0. The ratio is not just about interceptors. It's about decision speed, network resilience, and what happens when one side loses its command brain before the first full punch lands. At 2:24, while the defensive battle is still unfolding, an authorization is expanded for follow-on strikes against the remaining military infrastructure directly tied to the attempt attack. This matters. The goal is no longer simply to blunt a salvo. It is to deny repeat capability before surviving units can reconstitute. And this is where American doctrine becomes mercilessly methodical. Not cities, not symbolism, capability. A Virginia-class submarine contributes additional cruise missiles against transporter hide sites and hardened communications relays. Carrier-based aircraft in the broader theater move against mobile launchers caught repositioning. Stealth fighters prosecute radar emitters that reveal themselves too late. A fuel farm supporting missile operations burns in disciplined orange sheets. 2 above-ground maintenance sheds collapse. A relay tower on a ridge falls into darkness. The system is being disassembled faster than it can understand the pattern. Inside the shattered mountain, the picture is worse. Rescue teams reach one western portal and find it half-blocked by slab concrete, twisted rails, and the carcasses of support vehicles crushed by internal blast pressure. Communications with the lower command level remain dead. Portable radios bounce uselessly off rock interference. Fire suppression in one chamber never triggered because the control loop is gone. In another, emergency lighting comes on for 12 seconds and dies. Some personnel make it out through service routes choked with dust. Many do not. This is the hard truth of hardened military sites. When they work, they are fortresses. When they fail inward. By 2:42, or just 25 minutes after weapon release and barely over an hour since the first warning cue, the mountain base is no longer functioning as a command center. The surviving Iranian missile units are isolated, their launch sequence broken, their targeting authority fragmented, their air defense cover damaged, their confidence annihilated. Additional strikes continue against only those military nodes assessed as directly relevant to further attacks. Regional air defenses remain on maximum readiness because no serious commander assumes a wounded adversary is finished. But the initiative is gone, completely gone. Now step back and look at the full timeline. Minute 0. The shaping operation pollutes the air picture. Minute 3. External nodes around the mountain are hit. Minute 8. The B-21 releases. Minute 10. The command core is collapsing. Minute 12. The first desperate ballistic launches begin. Minute 18. Upper-tier intercepts are killing threats in space and at altitude. Minute 26. Cruise missiles are being cut down over water and land. Minute 30. The drone wave is erased. Minute 42. The mountain command has ceased to function as a warfighting brain. Less time than many people spend scrolling on their phones before sleep. The physical damage assessment in this fictional case is severe and specific. 2 major tunnel access points collapsed or rendered unusable. A third cratered and blocked by secondary debris. 1 primary ventilation stack destroyed. External communications and power support nodes neutralized. Multiple radar and point defense positions knocked out. 4 transporter erector launchers confirmed destroyed near the complex. On others stranded without coordinated tasking. Estimated military personnel losses inside and around the site are heavy, though exact numbers remain unclear in the immediate aftermath, because the very systems meant to report them were among the first things buried. On the defending side, no major regional base is put out of action. A handful of injuries, localized fires, scattered debris damage, no strategic paralysis, no dramatic propaganda victory, no shift in the balance they were trying to force. And that is the real lesson. Modern warfare still respects steel, explosives, range, and courage. But above all, it rewards the side that sees first, understands first, decides first, and disrupts the enemy's system before the enemy can translate intent into synchronized violence. The mountain mattered. The concrete mattered. The air defenses mattered. The missile inventory mattered. But once the command architecture was exposed, all that hardness became secondary. A buried base is not invincible. It is simply a problem set. And if the side solving that problem brings stealth, integration, real-time intelligence, layered missile defense, and political willingness to act before the full salvo leaves the rails, then the fortress can become a trap for the people who trusted it. There's another lesson too, and it's human. Every icon on a screen becomes a person when the countdown starts. The Iranian conscript on perimeter watch, the American air battle manager at Al Udeid, the pilot in the Raider, the Patriot crew chief waiting for the engagement order, the mechanic asleep in a bunk who wakes to a siren and a sky full of fragments. Technology decides a lot. As training decides more. But in those compressed minutes, it is still human judgment that prevents panic from turning into catastrophe. Could a different decision 10 minutes earlier or later have changed the scale of this fictional war? Absolutely. So, what does this reveal about future conflict? That the next decisive strike may not be the one that destroys the most targets. It may be the one that destroys the enemy's ability to connect targets, sensors, shooters, and leadership fast enough to matter. The side that masters that chain becomes the predator. The side that loses it becomes prey, no matter how much mountain it hides under. What does this reveal about future conflicts? Let's discuss. Subscribe for more strategic analysis.